All right, folks, welcome back to online English class. Hope you guys are doing well today. Today we're going to be finishing up our work on OTN 7, which analyzes Part 3, Chapters 1 through 3 of 1984. Okay, notice that we're going to be looking at a new selection of key passages on the right here, which deal with O'Brien's description of the ultimate purpose, the telos of the party's power, answering that all-important question that has been raised in the novel prior to this point: why is the party doing what they do, both to Winston as an individual and to Oceania on a society-wide level? Why do they do what they do? Well, before we get into an answer to that question, let's quickly look back through the top of the week announcements. First and foremost, make sure that you are completing your daily discussion grade procedure. Also, make sure that you are completing your reading of 1984 so you can be prepared for your email reading check confirmation next Monday. Also, complete your OTNs as we complete them in class. We only have 2 more, OTN 8 and 9, before we are done with this unit. After those OTNs are done, we'll take our unit test and after that unit test is complete, we'll spend the last week of school on May 18th through the 22nd working on your quarter 4 essay. That essay should be in my email inbox no later than May 22nd at 3 p.m., okay? If it is not in my email inbox at that time, then you will incur a late penalty. If it is too late, then it will be counted as a 0 according to the standards in the syllabus. Okay, so let's not tempt fate there, lest you would like to fail the 4th quarter of English 2, which none of you should make that your goal. Okay, so let's go ahead and turn our attention back to OTN 7. All right, we've already completed our SQ3R for this section of text multiple days ago. And we've been embroiled in a continual analysis of how Winston is characterized and how the dystopian environment that exerts totalitarian control over him is developed in these scenes. Okay, so in our last class, we discussed the fact that Winston is brought to a place where there ironically is no darkness, and it's this sort of timeless or eternal atmosphere where O'Brien, his chief tormentor, his chief torturer, acts as a kind of doctor or a teacher or a priest, which all together collectively develops this impression that the party wants to frame Winston's torture and brainwashing, the destruction of Winston's soul, as the redemption of Winston's soul. This, in the party's twisted way, ministers to Winston's uniquely human desire to be realigned with his essence. Okay, the human creature is the only creature with a kind of uneasy conscience, right? The human creature looks around themselves and within themselves and recognizes to a certain extent that all is not well with them, that they are not exactly as they ought to be, okay? Or at least that is typical, unless they are, that person is deeply narcissistic or like a psychopath or a sociopath who is incapable of achieving an accurate understanding of themselves and also others, okay? But there's a reason why that's a mental illness, right? Is because it's not exactly reflective of reality, okay? There is this sort of existential reality for the human being that you have an uneasy conscience. And along with that comes the desire to be redeemed, to be reconciled, okay? And to varying extents, right, different worldviews or religions or belief systems allow the individual to salve their uneasy conscience by connecting them to a kind of redeemer, okay? Now, obviously, if you are a Christian, you would assert that the real redemption comes from reconciliation to God through Christ, okay? Everything short of that is just an empty attempt to salve that uneasy conscience. But, all right, the fact of the uneasy conscience, the fact that that exists, signals to us human beings that there is a sense, all right, innate in humanity that no other animal has, right? No cow, no dog, no bear sits around thinking, I'm not exactly the person that I ought to be, right? They're not morally responsible creatures. They just do what they do, and they don't feel bad about anything, right? Sounds like a pretty delightful existence, right? Well, that is not your existence, all right? Rather, you have been created morally responsible. Okay, you have in you a kind of innate desire to be justified, to be made right, to achieve enlightenment, to have an existence that is in connection and in correspondence with transcendent truths, timeless realities, eternal truths, to have a doctor, a teacher, a priest enlighten or illuminate your soul, to solve your spiritual, your intellectual, and your physical problems, and to redeem you, right, where there is no darkness left. Now, ironically, right, the party which frames Winston's torture as this redemption process is actually destroying Winston's soul, plunging him into a deeper darkness, the deepest darkness that is possible for the human being to be plunged in. Okay, using this desire for enlightenment, right, describing the destruction of Winston's soul as the redemption of it. Okay, yesterday we talked about a significant portion of the party's attempt to destroy Winston's soul, and that is their attempt to destroy Winston's rationality. Okay, now a human being is not only rational, but they are uniquely and importantly rational. And part of that rationality, okay, means that a human being is free or ought to be free because they are rational, capable of rational thinking, and, all right, that they are equal. Let me explain to you how, okay? So when we assert that an individual, a person, is rational, okay, sorry for all the scribbling, but just stick with me, okay, when we assert that an individual is rational, it means to a certain extent that that human being can use their reason in order to develop notions of the true and the good and the beautiful. They can use their senses. They can observe and analyze and study the world and discover things like gravity. Now, I couldn't discover gravity. I am not smart enough. But a human being can and did, named Sir Isaac Newton. Okay? And no animal could. It's part of the human inheritance that you are rational, that you can, to a certain extent, investigate and analyze truth, investigate and analyze what is good, investigate and analyze what is beautiful, investigate and analyze what is just. Okay? And because you are capable of doing that, now you're not always right, which we'll get to, which means that you're equal. Because you can be right, all right, it means that you should also be free to externalize those understandings, okay? Because for a rational creature, right, it is only rational to build a life that is in alignment with that which is true and that which is good and that which is beautiful and that which is just. And a person exhibits what we call freedom, free choice, whenever they live externally and make choices externally that align with these internal apprehensions of the true, the good, the beautiful, and the just. Okay? For example, right? For example, if you determine that it is true that all men are created equal with certain inalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and that they ought to be involved in the construction and participate in by consenting to their government, then it is also true, it follows that you ought to build yourself a democratic society, right, like we have here in the United States of America. If that is true, then it rationally leads to this external behavior, okay? Now, a human being is not only free to agree with that, though. They could disagree with that and build a different kind of society if they wanted to. That is a reflection of human freedom, as human beings are not only capable of analyzing physical material, but also of analyzing concepts like the good, the beautiful, and the just. All right? But, stick with me here, all right? Just because a human being is rational, right, doesn't mean that they're always right about everything. They can be right, but they also can be wrong. So it is only rational to live in a society, to live in communal relationships in which each individual is equally free to pursue his or her notions of the true and the good and the beautiful and the just according to his or her best understanding of them. Okay? Because, like I've already said, human beings can be wrong and they can be right, and therefore when an individual takes away the rights of another person to live in alignment with their beliefs, then they are to varying degrees exhibiting what we would call tyranny. Okay? So, tyranny is not good. It defies the equality and freedom of man that is rooted in man's shared rationality. Okay? So, clearly, the party cannot allow its citizens to believe that they are rational. So what do? Well, yesterday we studied the passage in which O'Brien uses his own twisted philosophy, which is a belief system based on reason, okay, based on knowledge, all right, or belief systems, reasoned belief systems, right? O'Brien uses the party's philosophy in order to persuade Winston that he's not rational, that he cannot trust his senses. And if he cannot trust his senses, and no human being can, in an ultimate sense, right, it follows that the only people or the only group that can be trusted is the party. That's what O'Brien argues, right? Because the party is in control of reality. They are in control of what is true, what is good, what is beautiful, and what is just. And anyone who defies their understanding of these things cease to exist. Therefore, they're in control of them, right? Therefore, you cannot trust your own senses, right? Because sanity is controlled by the party. Okay, O'Brien must convince Winston of this irrational idea using his own rationality. Okay, so the next phase of Winston's re-education and redemption is another assault on Winston's rational nature. Okay, a deeper level of his rational nature, which is related to Winston's ability to ask, answer, and live in light of teleological questions, or questions of ultimate purpose. All right? So what do I mean by telos? I mean a larger purpose that is at the back of or at the end of one's actions. Okay, so like for example, and I know I've explained this before, let me rehash it quickly. For example, okay, you ask a student why they go to school. All right, they might say something like, well, my parents make me. And then you would say, well, why do your parents make you go to school? And you might say, well, because it's the law. The law requires us in the United States of America to go to school. Okay, and you would say, well, why does the law say that? And you would say, well, the governing structures of the United States of America, which are democratically put in place, all right, have agreed that it is good for citizens to not be ignorant and to think through things and be conscientious and aware of the basic material construction of the world around them through mathematics and science, and also to think about issues of philosophy and ethics and morality in their humanities classes. Okay, well, a Christian might say, well, right, okay, but what if those people are wrong? Right? The Christian student would say, the ultimate purpose of my education is not because anyone told me to do it. It's not because of any law of man. It's not because I'm going to get money when I get older. The telos, the purpose of my education, is to know God and His world better. And then all of education starts to make way more sense, because even the stuff that's not going to put $1 in your pocket helps you know God's world, and by extension, its maker better. Okay? So then, therefore, all of those equations that you say, how am I going to use this in my job, they become testimonies to the beauty of the logic of God's creation. And it doesn't matter if you're not going to use them in your job to put $1 in your pocket. It matters because it's true. It matters because that truth was written and inscribed on the world by God. That is enough. That is plenty reason. Okay? So, telos is all about ultimate purpose. Now, the human creature is the only living organism that is capable of considering telos. All right, it is a way of applying one's rationality, okay, to the ultimate ideas at the back of one's life. Okay, so let me give you a quick example of how this works. All right, another example. All right, a lot of times people that I know don't really understand why I spend so many hours and so much time working on my classes and analyzing and writing, analyzing books and writing lectures. Okay, because they don't fully understand or agree or haven't thought through the larger purpose that animates and motivates my work. Okay, it certainly isn't the money. All right. Because the money is, it's a living, but I could also go home a couple hours early and guess what? Make the same money, right? I could not show up on Saturday, all right, as I typically do, and make the same amount of money. My bosses wouldn't know the difference, and they wouldn't pay me any different, right? So it's not the money that motivates that work exactly, right? It's part of it, okay, but it certainly isn't the heart of it, right? What is the ultimate purpose? Well, the ultimate purpose of all of that work is because I view my work as a teacher as an act of worship. It is what I have been designed to do. It is in alignment with my essence as a human being. It is the form of worship that I was chiefly put on earth to perform. Okay, and each different individual, according to a Christian worldview, are called unto different kinds of work and labor like that, right? And so the work and the labor that they do, regardless of whether or not they're being paid or how much they are being paid, regardless of how much they are being respected or esteemed in their community or loved or rewarded, right, with any of these other kinds of motivators, regardless of any of that stuff, it is good to do simply because it is in correspondence with your ultimate purpose. It is in connection to your ultimate telos. All right? And in that way, your work becomes rational. Your life becomes reasonable. So not only does analyzing the text, right? Does analyzing the text require reason? Does it require intelligence? Yeah, okay. So you're looking at the details, you're reading the words, you're following the plot, you're connecting with outside ideas and research that you've done about philosophy and theology. It requires intellect and rationality. But in order for the project, in order for the whole project, the totality of the project to make sense, the work needs to be connected to a larger purpose. Okay? So a human being can discover that larger purpose, and they can do so freely. All right? Stick with me. I know I'm doing a lot of philosophizing. Stick with me. They can do so freely. In other words, the human being is free to determine that they are their own ultimate purpose, that their own wealth is their own ultimate purpose, and they can align all of their actions, their education, all of their time, with the pursuit of their own pleasure, their own power, and their own wealth. They could determine that the ultimate purpose of life, like William Wordsworth would argue, is living in correspondence and in harmony with certain natural unities or nature itself. Okay, and they could do everything that they could to try and live in accordance with that ultimate purpose. You could, like a Christian, determine that worshiping God is your ultimate purpose and do anything and everything in order to align your actions in your life with that ultimate purpose. But the point is, when you are investigating ultimate purpose, when you're asking this distinctly human question, why, all right, the answer to this question leads to a series of free choices, all right, in which you pursue the answer to this ultimate question, all right? It adds a kind of rationality to your life, and in that way, all right, is an incredibly important and ventricle aspect not only of the human's rational nature, but also how that rational nature makes you free, all right? But not only free, right? What else? Equal, because you and me and everyone have been made equally as human beings with the ability and the responsibility to ask and answer this question according to that which you believe to be true. good, just, beautiful, right. Okay? So you're free, you're equal, you're rational. Okay? Clearly, the party must destroy this. Okay? So on page 261, all right, O'Brien assaults this portion of Winston's soul after convincing him that his mind is incapable of answering or apprehending reality in a reliable way. He goes on to deconstruct yet another, a deeper aspect of Winston's rational nature, his ability to understand and pursue a teleological answer to his existence, or a telos at the back of his life. Okay? He says, all right, do you remember writing in your journal, I understand how, but I do not understand why? He says, essentially, right, it's time for me to explain to you why. All right, on the next page over, right, he begins to question Winston and say, why do you think it is that we exert power? Okay, why do you think that what is the best answer of why you think we cling to power so much, says O'Brien. And Winston responds, all right, in his brain by thinking that the party did not seek, that O'Brien would say that the party didn't seek power for its own ends, but only for the good of the majority, that it sought power because men in the mass were frail, cowardly creatures who could not endure liberty or face the truth and must be ruled over and systematically deceived by others who were stronger than themselves. Okay, that the choice for mankind lay between freedom and happiness, and that for the great bulk of mankind, happiness was better because they would misuse their freedom. Okay, this is what Winston thinks. And when Winston thinks these thoughts, O'Brien corrects him that you are being stupid. You are absolutely wrong. Right? Winston says, you are ruling over us for our own good, he says feebly. Okay? O'Brien responds, that was stupid, Winston. Stupid. Why is this a stupid answer? Why is this an incorrect analysis of the telos of the party? Because if the party were indeed ruling for the benefit of their citizens, what would the ultimate, even though they were doing it in a way that seemed harsh and mean and incurred suffering on them, right, and restricted those liberties that they think they ought to have a right to, even if they were ruling them in a mean way, but it was ultimately for their benefit, okay, what would the telos of their actions be? The well-being of mankind. Right, that they would justify their existence with humanitarian kinds of ends. All right, we're doing this for the well-being of humanity. That is, according to O'Brien, completely stupid. They are not doing this for the well-being of humanity. The party does not rule according to a normal, rational approach to governorship, which the normal, rational approach to governorship, whether tyranny or democracy and freedom, is this is the best way, right? What did Hitler argue? The tyranny of the Aryan race over the rest of the world is the best way. Why? Because we're the master race. What did the Assyrian Empire argue? The tyranny of the Assyrian race over the rest of the world is the best way because we are the master race. Okay, what did the Roman Empire argue? The tyranny of the Latin race over the known world is the best way because we are the master race. Okay, even tyrannies from the past, as they constricted freedom, did so with these sort of equivocal humanitarian ends. The party is not stupid like that. They are not weak or half committed to power. Rather, they say, okay, watch, they say that they seek power entirely for its own sake. That the ultimate ends of the exertion of power by the party is what? Power. Now, rationally, that doesn't make sense, okay? Typically, a human being understands that you work, you exert power, you exert force in order to obtain something, right? Typically, power for human beings is used or manipulated in order to obtain wealth or comfort, or to stroke one's ego, or to make one feel secure or safe, right? But the party's not like that, and they are similar to Iago, right? What did Iago have to gain in the destruction of Othello, in the play Othello, right? Well, by the end of the narrative, after a sort of equivocating and giving a bunch of different answers all throughout the play, what does he say? He just says, there really is no reason. I just do it because I like it. I do it because I hate goodness. I do it because I enjoy having control, right? It's the sweetness of that feeling of knowing that you could beat up your friend if push came to shove, right? It's the sweetness of knowing that you could say something to humiliate your best friend if push came to shove, right? You have that power over them. You have that upper hand over them, right? And the sweetness of that experience is part of what the party is constantly attempting to obtain, always, ever pursuing, right? More power, more power, more power, okay? For the party, all right, O'Brien sums it up by saying God is power, and the reverse then is true. Power is God. And this is very different than the statement that God is powerful, okay, or that God is loving or God is love. Okay, this is to say that power is the ultimate. That power is the ultimate end of all human activity. That the purpose of the party's entire structure, the purpose of the party, all of the party's endeavor is simply to exert control, to dominate humanity. Hence, listen, their allowance of Winston to discover his own humanity. Why did they not just stop it before it occurred? Well, because in allowing Winston to discover his humanity, they have more to conquer. They have more to take from him. When they allow him to discover what life should be like, what it could be like, the pleasure of taking it from him is increased. Okay? This is indicated for us in this conversation here, okay, in which O'Brien asks, how does one man assert power over another, Winston? And Winston thinks in his mind, by making him suffer. Now, why is that true? It is because no man would ever choose deliberately to suffer. Okay, right? If I attempted to exert tyrannical control over you by commanding you to eat your favorite candy once a day in a moderate amount, right? That would be a ridiculous assertion of my power over you, because you would want to do that. You would choose to do that freely. Okay? That's the difference between God's rule and reign and the party's rule and reign. Okay? Here, the party asserts the fact that the process of making a man suffer is how one man knows for sure he is in control of another man. Hence, their torture of Winston, which is made all the more meaningful by what? By the freedom that he experienced in parts 1 and 2. This is the reason why they allow him to experience and to understand the beauty of his own humanity, so that when they destroy it, they can have conquered something significant, big, and meaningful. The world, all right, that O'Brien and the party want to create is summed up or symbolized, according to O'Brien, by a boot stamping on the human face over and over again for eternity. It is not a government that is for the sake of its constituents. In fact, it's not even a government that is for the sake of its ruling members, because the ruling members must also sacrifice their rationality for the service of the party. The people who made up the fiction are the ones who must believe it most fanatically. They must double think the most. They must humiliate themselves the furthest. Okay? In other words, the party's power requires all human beings, everyone in Oceania's society, to destroy their most basic human essence and to refine that essence as members of the collective party. Okay? Not as individuals, but as members of the collective party. This is a great testimony to the essence of evil, a great reflection of the way in which sin destroys and overpowers the human being for the sake of nothing, for the sake of destruction. The evil one, your enemy, seeks your destruction, seeks your dehumanization, seeks to remake you in his image instead of the image of the God in who you were made to imitate. For what reason? For what purpose? Ultimately, no purpose. For the purpose of suffering, for the purpose of power, for the purpose of cruelty. The party in this way reminds me both of satanic rebellion against God and the relentless pursuit of the human being of sin and its irrational nature, and also Iago's manipulation and destruction of Othello. All right, I hope you guys have a great day. All right, I hope this wasn't. I hope this was engaging enough to capture the weight of these ideas. I hope you're tracking with me. I understand that this is abstract and philosophical, but ultimately these are beautiful ideas that are worthy of your attention. And as horrible as the society is in Oceania, right? Part of what makes it so horrifying is because the human being, when allowed to live as he or she ought to live, is a beautiful, beautiful thing, right? So whenever he is not, it is a horrible, ugly thing, right? That's part of what this novel helps us see. Okay, have a great day.